Good morning, Breakfast with Bacon fans. My guest today is here to change your perspectives. I'm hoping we do that. In the ministry that I'm in and the field I'm in, often when people's marriages break up, one or the other of the spouses claim, "Oh, my spouse was abusive." Many of the times it's just an excuse to get out of a relationship. And based on the things that I've heard, it's really not abuse at all. But sometimes it really is. And today, my guest, Michael Ananias, is the founder of the Ananias Foundation. It is an organization that is here to help people, and he could probably say it better than me, who have had a violent episode or two, or one whom the world would define as an abuser. Do people have to stay abusive? Is there help? Can they be redeemed, or are they just the evil people in society that we should label and never forgive? I know that sounds kind of brutal, but in the back of our minds, I think that's kind of the perspective many have. So, with that picture painted, I'd like to say, welcome, Michael Ananias, to the Breakfast with Bacon show. I am so grateful for you coming on, so grateful for your ministry, so grateful for your vulnerability and sharing your story. And of course, for helping my viewers be broken of this problem, evil, ill. So welcome to the Breakfast with Bacon show.
Christine, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
So I think we should just kind of deal with the elephant in the room. Are you one whom had at some point in your past been defined as an abuser?
Yes, I am. So I'm a former domestic violence offender. I was arrested actually twice for domestic violence. This was 20 years ago in 2005. Went to jail, was mandated to a batterers intervention program. And, what I will tell you, and I will tell your listeners, this is something that I didn't intend to do. I didn't want to do. I knew was wrong. I knew was terribly damaging to my relationship with my then wife. I knew I could get into legal trouble in addition to relationship trouble. And yet those actions still poured out of me. So that's my background. That's my history. And I really felt at the time, if I can figure this out, maybe, just maybe, I can reach back and help some others who find themselves in the same situation where they realize, hey, I'm doing things that are hurtful, that are harmful, and I don't want to be that person, and yet I'm not really sure how to change. And so that idea was with me. And as I learned and healed and changed myself, that idea just continued to nag me for a number of years until about 8.5 years ago when I started the Ananias Foundation.
Wow. Okay. I don't like to stay in dark places, but I know that there'll be people watching saying, "Oh, well, was he one of those that simply grabbed his wife by the wrists and shoved her away to stop a fight from happening?" Which is what I usually see. Husband and a wife are fighting, and often the wife antagonizes, and he just like grabs her. I've heard three or four or five guys like just grabbed her wrist and said, "Get away," and she tripped and fell backwards. "Oh, you're abusive." To me, I'm like, all right, there's explanation for that. Or was there real, I have anger and I lost control kind of thing? Again, not here to shame you, but we're talking
Yeah.
real abuse.
Well, when we consider that abuse, and let's just unpack that term abuse. Abuse is any action that we do that causes harm to something else. I mean, we can abuse the lawnmower by not checking the oil on it, or mowing over rocks. So abuse is really harmful treatment,
Right, right.
and it can be physical abuse, it can be emotional abuse. But absolutely. Things that I did fall under the category of emotional and physical abuse. From a physical standpoint, like the first time that I was arrested, I had grabbed her, put her head in a headlock, pulled her hair, and was screaming at her. I don't think I'm not justifying that. I don't think anybody should
Correct.
justify that. I think that is considered physical abuse.
Yes,
There
yes.
were other times where I slapped her, threw her onto the bed. So those are all acts of physical violence.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so absolutely no excuse. There are certainly worse acts, but there are uh, plenty of people who are only emotionally abusive. And I say only emotionally abusive because we know that emotional abuse, even though we haven't touched someone, can be as harmful, if not more harmful, to the person who's receiving that. So, yeah, that's
I
me,
just
and that's
wanted to
more my
make sure
story.
because I didn't want my viewers to go, oh, he probably was, because we're going to talk about redemption. And if they don't think there was really anything to be redeemed from, but there truly was. I mean, you don't put your wife in a headlock and pull her hair. So there
Right.
is something to be redeemed from. I'm going to ask you what happened to cause you to be abusive?
Boy, and that is the million-dollar question. Because in that time period, it's like I know I don't want to be this person. I don't want to do these things, and yet I didn't know why I was doing them. Why do they come pouring out? And one of the naive assumptions I made was, well, surely there's somebody that knows this answer that has a ready answer and plenty of help that I'm going to be able to figure this out. And that was really surprising to me is that it took a lot of work on my part to unpack the why did I behave that way? And more importantly, what do I need to do to change? It was a lot harder than I thought it needed to be. I mean, one of the real disappointments was, okay, I was arrested twice. I was mandated to go to a domestic violence intervention program or a batter's intervention program in my state. And I spent 36 weeks there going diligently to that program and never really got a good answer or good insight of why I behaved this way or what I needed to stop. Mostly the message was, well, you just need to stop. You just need to know that this is wrong to do. And it's like, I already know that, but you didn't tell me the how.
Right. Right. And if we don't know that, it's like the alcoholic can't recognize that he's an alcoholic if he doesn't really have some of that basic information, like, wow,
Right.
so we just need to be direct. So I haven't told you any of this, but I teach anger management classes, sexual assault intervention for the military, domestic violence awareness, and things like that. So one of the things that I've taught and I know is that 6 out of 10 people who were abused will abuse. And one of the ways I explain it is that as children, and to greater and lesser degrees, right? So as children, our parents, they're not perfect either. They don't always know how to handle their anger. They abuse us. We hate it. You're a little boy, you're a child who hates it. You're scared. You run underneath your bed and you're saying your prayers, Jesus, please make this stop. But then when you get older and you're like, I'm never going to abuse, I'm never going to abuse, I'm never going to abuse. And then you get older, you're faced with conflict. No one's ever taught you how to handle conflict. So when the tension builds and the going gets tough, you habitually respond by lashing out in a way that you said you never would. And then you loathe yourself in the meanwhile, though you're not going to admit that publicly because, well, then I'd have to admit I'm an abuser. Instead, we make excuses for why we did it or it's that person's fault, and so on and so forth until we realize, wow, I do need to find out in what situations do I find myself getting here and why do I feel to do this and what can I do instead? So, as a child, were you exposed to poor conflict management styles? Was anybody in your life abusive to you?
Yes, and Christine, I really appreciate what you said there, is that was one of the things that I finally learned, was finally able to unpack, is for me, and I know this is true for a lot of our clients, this really goes back to our childhood experiences that we had as a child. And I'm going to add to what you said. Not only do we have this memory of how we saw conflict handled as a child, but somewhere in our minds, whether we did it consciously or not, we made this vow, I'm never going to let that happen to me again. I'm never going to be hurt like that again. And what happens in
Mm.
conflict? We have somebody yelling at us, we have somebody criticizing us. Maybe we feel like that criticism is unfair, and that mechanism kicks in, that memory or that vow kicks in, I'm never going to let this happen to me again. And what do? We try to stop it. How do we try to stop it? We try to control the situation. And we may control it with anger. We may try to control it with violence, with put downs, with, whatever mechanism we might have witnessed that we saw maybe our parents or family of origin do. But we're trying to stop getting hurt like we maybe were hurt before when we were a child. So now back to your question. There are lots of folks who have experienced far worse upbringings than I did. Um, that said, my father was an alcoholic. I got yelled at a lot when I was a kid. Um, didn't hear a lot of good things about me, but all kinds of criticism. So in the back of my mind, somewhere deep in those subconscious thoughts was never going to let that happen to me again. And so, guess what? I become an adult, I get into a marriage, and my spouse is criticizing me, is yelling at me, is saying what feels like mean and hurtful things about me. And that mechanism of, I've got to stop this. I've got to stop this person from saying this. I've got to stop this person from even thinking this about me. And, we overreact in an effort to try to protect a very fragile sense of self that we're carrying around.
I'm going to go a little bit direction maybe you've never heard. So, are you familiar with Myers-Briggs or personality temperaments?
Yeah.
So, I'm a
Yeah.
facilitator of that, and it's a for people who don't understand. There's four separate dichotomies: extroverted versus introverted. People who get their information either through sensing or through their intuition. You make your decisions based on thinking or feeling. And I want to stop on that one because of this whole model that's been put together. That thinking feeling is the only dichotomy that's broken down by gender. Statistically, 66% of men prefer the thinking function over the feeling function, and 66% of women prefer feeling. Now, it doesn't mean feelers don't think and thinkers don't feel. They both do both. It's just which one they prefer.
Right.
What I found is I decided to give my Myers-Briggs to my students in my anger management classes. And I worked with the military. So I had a lot of men, but still had women as well. And I found that 66% of the men in anger management classes were feelers and
Mm.
66% of the women were thinkers. They were the absolute opposite to societal norms. So, on top of what you've been saying, oftentimes it was a man who was more sensitive and he either had a father or no one taught him how to nurture that it's okay to be more sensitive and be a man. It didn't make you weak, it didn't make you less than. And so, really working. So, what they've found through the research is that a feeling man will tend to become either chauvinistic or overcompensate and become angry and kind of lash out because I'm tough. I'm tough. Anyway, so with that in mind, and that may be new information for you, have you found that in any of the research you've done with the men and women you've worked with at the Ananias Foundation that, or even with yourself, that they tend to be a little bit more tender in terms of empathy for others than maybe the typical suck it up kind of man? Or is that way beyond the scope of what you've done so far?
Yeah, well, first of all, we don't do research, but as a
Well, kind of social
control
observant.
group
Yeah.
type of thing, but certainly have read. And one of my jobs is to read the research of what are we learning about domestic violence, what causes it, how to stop it, and the studies point to this notion that the primary reason why somebody does something hurtful or harmful to someone is to stop them from hurting them or get back at them for
Yeah.
hurting them. That's the number one motivation. Number one motivation. This is true for men and women. It's not necessarily a very healthy way of handling that, but it's really what we look at in our program is to try to help people develop better emotional control. So, kind of to your point, a lot of us, and me included, like I just knew that I was upset. I knew that I felt angry, but I couldn't even name what emotion was
Emotion was.
underneath that anger. It just never even occurred to me. This happened. I feel angry. I act out on it. And that was really part of my journey of healing is to realize those moments when I'm feeling upset and try to identify what emotion I'm feeling and maybe what thought is creating that emotion. And a lot of times I'd realize, oh, I don't actually need to think that way. And therefore, I don't need to feel this way. I don't
Yeah.
actually need to be that upset. And even if I am, can I
Can I
soothe
deal with that
myself,
emotion? Yeah.
bring that emotion down, and then have a conversation with my partner or, this person at work or whoever, um, so that I can have that conversation from my rational brain instead of my emotional brain, my lizard brain.
And that's exactly what we do in anger management is we go, what is the primary emotion? Because anger comes out as a secondary emotion. It's covering up a primary. And so
Right.
fantastic that you do that. I know we're going to talk about the Ananias Foundation, but people love stories first. That's why I love talking about you. When was your aha moment? Was this a slow progression, or was there a moment where you went, oh my gosh, I am an abuser. I don't want to be an abuser, and I am going to fix it? Or was it just slow, like you said? I started saying, what are the things it causes? How can I be better?
Yeah. So, um, little history on me. I'm in my third marriage. The abuse for which I got arrested for was in my second marriage. And even in my first marriage, I'd heard from some inklings from my wife that her parents thought I was abusive. That marriage ended. In second marriage, my wife at that time was telling me that I was abusive. And of course, we don't want to hear that about ourselves. That there's so much shame and so much
Yeah.
stigma associated with that. Look, I know I have a temper. I know there's things wrong with me. I know I'm not perfect, but I'm not abusive, right? That's kind of what our mind wants, where it wants to go to to reassure us that we're okay, that we're not a horrible person. And so probably my aha moment was when I got a hold of a book by Beverly Engel. It was called The Emotionally Abusive Relationship. And she had very early in the book one of these
Yes.
questionnaires.
Yeah.
If you do, here's 10, 15, 20 things. Do you do these things? And it's like, well, yeah, sometimes. Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah. And then, you kind of score yourself and it's like, oh my gosh, that really is me. Like I'm doing enough of these things and doing them frequently enough that, yeah, I'm probably abusive. So
God
I think
bless you.
that was really my aha moment. And Ms. Engel did a fantastic job of presenting that in a very non-shaming way. I think she said something to the effect of, "Look, there are no monsters here, just hurting people that are trying to figure it out." It's like, yeah, that describes me.
And I'm glad you said that because there are, no monsters. And,
Right,
again, we've got some of those sociopaths that we see on TV, like, they don't care and they serial kill 40 people and they smile at the end and let them, you know,
right.
that's that, first of all, I think those people are very, very rare. But the
Yes,
average person who is guilty of abuse, the one that we would label as an abuser, is as you defined. He's a little man or a little boy trapped in a man's body, a young girl in a woman's body who was dealt a hand of dealing with this and who hates him or herself and how they handle this. And they just really would rather be a good person. They rather would do the good things. So how do we look at them? Okay, so I think we've set that page. So
And
there,
Christine, I just want to say what you said
yes,
universally describes people that we work with. Universally, I mean, I don't know, maybe because our program is primarily voluntary, people are looking for help and they're not coming saying, "Hey, there's nothing wrong with me, but I'm here anyway." No, they're very humbly saying, I don't like this. I don't like what I'm doing. I know I'm hurting somebody, and I don't want to be this way."
how long did it take you from reading that book and going, wow, that's me, to feeling cured?
Boy, that's a good question. And it's one of the questions that we explore in our program is when am I there? When have I arrived? When am I cured? And I always had this thought that I really wish I was like the Thanksgiving turkey. When you buy those
The
Thanksgiving
baster
turkeys,
pops up. Yeah.
yeah, a little red button pops up and it says it's
Done.
done. And a little red button would pop up and I'd go, oh, hey, I'm done with my work. I'm 20 years into this. I'm still working. I'm still using this same techniques that I learned. We never become perfect. And so I'm still discovering buttons that I didn't know I had. And it's like, oh, there's something that I need to work on. I would say that abuse is one of those things that's on a continuum. And if we're honest and we look at all of the different things that can be abusive, and I mean by the definition of things that we might do that could harm somebody that we are in a relationship with, almost all of us do some of those things once in a while.
Yeah, like
As
saying
as a
F you, or I hate you, or
Absolutely. Or that's it,
drop
I'm done with
dead.
this
I'm done. Yeah.
relationship or
Yeah.
something. As a matter of fact, the research says that 25% of us have done physically abusive things in our relationship, 25%, and 75 or 80% of us have done emotionally abusive things. And I'm guessing that number is actually higher, but when they do surveys and get people to answer questions, it's probably the other 20 or 25% just weren't honest about their answers.
Mhm.
That's my guess. So the question is, when are we ever done? And it's a matter of moving from someone who is doing really hurtful, harmful things regularly, frequently, and some kind of over the top hurtful, harmful things, as I did, to less of them, and hopefully bring
None of
all of
them.
that
Yeah.
down to a level where we're very infrequently
Or it's
hurtful
socially
in what we say.
acceptable.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a very good non-answer for like
That
I
was
don't I
good.
don't know if I've ever arrived,
No, I was kind of
but
thinking
it's a
that's how you'd
huge
answer it.
question for it was a huge question for me and for all of us, and especially for someone who's been on the receiving end of this. Like, when do I'm thinking about staying with my partner. They've been abusive to
Yeah,
me.
it's risky.
And when do I deem them safe? When I see zero uh, hurtful things ever coming out of their mouth or out of their behavior, may never happen. When do I deem them safe? And it's a really hard question to answer that really only everybody can answer for themselves.
So one day you decided to found the Ananias Foundation. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I talked a little earlier about when I was in the thick of it, the work that I was doing on me. I had this thought, maybe someday, if I can ever figure this out, I can reach back and help other folks. And that thought just stayed with me. And we haven't talked about this, but really the two elements that really made a difference for me. One was a really good counselor who set up the question of that I was carrying around about myself. Am I lovable? Am I valuable? And I didn't really have an answer for that. So counselor set up the question. Then I started going back to church. And that's a whole story in itself. Started going back to church. And I started hearing this message that God, the creator of the universe, loves me immensely, so much that he sent his son to die for me. And that was really a game changer for me. So I'm on that journey and now also have a personal relationship with Jesus, with God through Jesus. And and yet this idea of, I made this pledge. If I can ever figure this out, maybe I can help other people. I kept hearing messages. One of the reasons why God allows us to go through what we go through is that we can be in a position of helping others who find themselves in that position as well. You lost a child to cancer when they were 4. Can you help other parents? It's terrible. It's tragic. Can you help others in that position? And my thing is, can I help others who find themselves hurting others in a relationship find healing and wholeness and change? And so this just stayed with me for a number of years. And so it was really, um, you know, probably a little bit like Jonah. God kept calling me, go to Nineveh, go to
Finally took a
Nineveh.
whale to get him to wake up.
Yeah. And he's like, no, no, not Nineveh. I don't want to go there. And as I thought about doing this as a Christian, and yet it's like, me, I really don't want to be the poster child for domestic violence. Surely somebody else is going to do this. Surely somebody else is already doing this. And it just never came to fruition. And finally, some life circumstances, job changes, health changes, things like that. It's like, you know what? I need to do this. And that was back the beginning of 2017, started the Ananias Foundation. So there was a pretty big gap between being arrested in 2005 and then 12 years later, now I'm finally actually doing something about this.
Well,
But
you were doing something about it in 2005, but as you just said, it's a continuum. You needed some time to heal, some time to recognize, your own role, and then some time to future. I mean, my organization is the same, except for I had an affair on my husband 40 years ago. And so most people are used to having the betrayed person start ministries, but to get someone
sure.
like me going, here's, your person who's betrayed you is redeemable, your marriage is salvageable.
Mhm.
And it is humiliating in a good way, humbling. Do you have to be the one to say, here's what I did, here's the mistakes I made, but look at how God's redeeming? So to have people come up to me and
Exactly.
say, if your marriage could be saved, so can mine. I'm like, absolutely. So God allowed me to make that horrible decision back then, but he's redeemed it for his greater glory to help others.
Right. And that's really given me peace on doing this, is that this is not about me. Look, if it was about me, I have a whole history of doing really terrible, awful things.
Yeah.
This is about what God did in my life. And it's, all credit to him.
So tell us about the Ananias Foundation. Who comes to it? What does it include? Is it a 6-week course? Uh, Tell us any of those questions.
Yeah, so the idea of the Ananias Foundation is really to be a place where people can come for resources. And those resources might be downloading a guidebook, which goes through, we put together a process for discovering what is behind behavior that you want to change, and then what it might take to heal it. And then also work on some techniques of managing emotions, calling timeouts, communication techniques, reconciliation considerations, all of those kinds of things that are pertinent to people who have been violent or abusive in their relationship. So we've really tried to build a number of resources, realizing that not one size doesn't fit everyone. Started with what we call our guidebook. Um, and that's a free resource that you can download from our website. We quickly turned that into a group where we'll go through the guidebook one section at a time every week in a live Zoom session. And so people can show up. And the nice thing about that is that they get in the group and on that call and they go, oh my gosh, I realize I'm not alone in this. There are other people, and they're really normal people too,
Yeah.
who are on this
Executives and
call with me. And I think that's one of the most powerful things, probably something I didn't anticipate in starting the group. Um, so even a group, either because of the time or because of the stigma of I don't want to show up and have somebody know me, we took that same information and we created an online course. It's complete with videos and questionnaires and reading and exercises, but it's really essentially the same program. I've taken a lot of I write on a regular basis about topics related to domestic violence, healing, change, that change journey, specific aspects of domestic violence and why we might be doing something and how to change. And I realized that, not everybody wants to read a blog post. I
right.
mean, our society is becoming less
Very
open to
video.
reading. And
Hmm.
so I started creating uh, video blogs and have a YouTube channel. So we have 60, 70 some videos on our YouTube channel related to those topics. So it's really kind of the idea is to be a center of resources for people who have been violent or abusive with their partner, but who want to change. And so that's really kind of what we've tried to do with the organization. Make it accessible. Everything we offer is free. And so there's no barrier of cost. There's no shame. We ask a very minimal amount of information for someone to sign up for a group or to download our guidebook, name and an email. And we don't need your whole background. We just like, if you want help, here it is. So that's really kind of the approach that we take.
Been almost a decade since you've had this.
Yeah, so we're
2017, you
in
said,
our
right?
ninth year of operating, which is mind blowing to me because it's gone really, really quickly.
Share with me a success story. Obviously, don't name names, but I'm sure that a man or a woman has said to you, thank you, because what you've done has changed my life.
Yeah. You know, I get you're getting me choked up now. Um, I get emails on a semi-regular basis from people. Hey, Michael, just checking in. Want you to know here's what's going on in my life or whatever. I had one guy um, who um, actually donated to the foundation. It's like, well, I kind of remember him in a group. He didn't really say too much. He didn't have his camera on. And, look, we're going to put the information out there. And if people want it, they're hungry for it, fine. But he sent a donation and he said, I just want you to know how life-changing this was for me, how this helped save my marriage. My wife has commented on how I'm a different person now and had the opportunity to. My wife, Lynn, and I had a chance to have lunch with them when we happened to be in their city and meet both of them. And so that was just really affirming, not only to hear from him, but to hear from her on, wow, I mean, he's just so different. So thank you. Another story of a man that came through our program, paid a lot of attention, worked really hard. Unfortunately, his marriage uh, ended. Despite his work and his change, the bus had already left the station, so to speak, and his wife was just not open to that. And I, got an email from him a few months ago. He's been single for a number of years and putting his life back together. And he'd met a woman, and they just got married last June. So really, whether we're helping restore a relationship that's hurting and there's reconciliation there, or we're just helping restore a person who may go on to have a healthy relationship sometime in the future. And I'm, case study. The woman who I was abusive to,
That was my next
and I
question. You're reading my mind.
are no longer married. I worked, I tried really hard to save that marriage. And, I really felt, God loves marriage. He loves redemption stories, restoration stories. Why can't that be my marriage? But it just wasn't. And now I see what he was doing in that, because so many of the folks that come to us, it's like that door's not open to them, regardless of how hard they work or how much change they make. Their partner is just not open to trusting them, or for whatever reason, and there's a number of different reasons, but for whatever reason they're just not open to reuniting. And so what do? Is it even worth going through all this work to heal if you can't save that marriage? Like, and I can tell them absolutely, because if you decide to get into another relationship, it's going to be completely different this time because you changed. And even if you don't, you're going to be a better daughter, son, brother, sister, neighbor, friend, coworker.
Parent.
Yeah, parent, absolutely. So,
So, do you have a relationship with your second wife? Has she seen the changes in you and has she forgiven you?
um, lots of questions in there. We have had only a very minimal amount of contact since our divorce. How many years ago? 10 plus years ago. Um, and as far as I know, no, she hasn't. She's never really acknowledged. I mean, even when we were married, she'd sort of acknowledge the changes, but then take them back, take back that
Yeah.
acknowledgement. Um, and so, to
So
my
we'll work
knowledge,
on
no,
her to
she's never,
forgive you.
never
Yeah.
forgiven me. Um, and, look, I look back at that relationship, and it wasn't just me who
No.
was doing really hurtful, harmful things in the relationship, including, an incident that happened after our divorce. We were trying to piece things back together where she battered me. I mean, physically battered me, uh, pushed my chair over, fell on me, bit my wrist. Um, you know,
Yeah, where she
and
could have gone through your course. Yeah.
yeah, or she could have gotten
Gone to
arrested
jail.
and gone to
Mm.
jail and gone through the batter's intervention program that I went through. But I mean, I didn't press charges, and I've never heard an apology for that. I've never heard an acknowledgement of that. So I'm guessing typically when people get this and they realize the harm that they did, one of the natural things that we want to do is to reach out to that person and say,
I'm sorry.
I
Yeah.
recognize this. I realize this. I'm so sorry. And that's never happened. So I've got to assume that she's still in that place.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said it takes two because really a lot of times it's not you. It's not about you. Yes, you caused some of that, but it's a problem with not trusting Jesus or forgiving or, so that's a whole separate level. And I do like to say that to the people who are the angry ones or the batterers. It's like, yeah, you're not alone. In most situations, you're not alone. So one day I believe she'll turn around and that'll be a helpful thing. So recently you've written two books. The first one is From Villain to Hero, but recently you wrote a new book that's coming out in 2 weeks, 10 days. The Truth
Yes.
About You. You'll never view domestic violence the same way again. You want to show them that cover of that book? You want to pull that one up?
Well, so this is the first one I wrote, and it's part memoir, part self-help. And it really talks about my journey as someone who was violent and abusive, discovering that, and what I learned along the way about me, in case that's helpful to other folks. And I mean, to be fair, it's a very nichey book. And I think it's sold like 11, 1,200 copies, which is not bad for
The
a
first
nichey
book.
book.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's available. The Truth About You, the book that I have coming out here in 2 weeks, is a novel. It is about domestic violence, but it really shows a very different view of domestic violence than the traditional narrative we have about domestic violence. So let me start with the traditional narrative is that we men do this because we think we're entitled, we are superior, we should get our way, we should be king of the castle. And when the little, whoa, sorry, when the little woman of the house doesn't obey, then we, bring down the hammer of abuse. And unfortunately, this story, this narrative has been told over and over and over in film, in media, in songs, in from domestic violence advocacy organizations. Um, that that's the dominant narrative that people have about domestic violence. And yet it's far, far from accurate about what most violent and abusive um, relationships are like. So, without giving away the whole book, it starts off with this man who's been arrested for domestic violence, and um, his wife's friends and daughters gather around to support her. The daughters then realize that she's not leaving him. She's still keeping him in her life and keeping him in her life. And they're concerned about that. What do we do to protect mom? And so their 20 something year old daughter's independent in their, early careers. And they decide what they're going to do is plant cameras in their home. Like, you hear about VRBOs or Airbnbs that have these hidden cameras spying on their guests. So they're going to do this and so they can see what's going on behind closed doors. And what they discover is far different than that narrative that they've been told. So um, it really is trying to bring out different aspects of domestic violence and probably giving a little bit of the story away. What they determine his mom is
you're
the
not giving,
abuser.
yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah. And so, how it plays out from there, I'll let the readers, you know,
yeah.
get the
And where
book and
can they
check it
get
out.
that book?
It will be available on Amazon, on Goodreads. We are going to be working, there will be a Kindle edition as well as a print edition. Pretty much anywhere you buy books online, Apple Books. So hope to have it in all of those places um,
Very soon.
and available to pick up.
Yeah. And there are links in the show notes here. You're going to have links to the Ananias Foundation, to his first book, the From Villain to Hero, the second book, The Truth About You. And if you feel that you perhaps have been accused, or maybe you suspect that you may have issues, that someone might call you an abuser, I would ask you to follow Michael on YouTube and all his places, but go to his website. It's private, it's confidential. No one's going to call you out. No one's going to demonize you. And it may be exactly what you need to find the healing in your life that you've been looking for, and the healing in your relationships. Um, Again, it's ananiasfoundation.org. One last question. Name one thing you would have our listeners do differently as a result of something they heard today.
If there's one thing that it's probably more along their belief system. First of all, that um, people who are causing harm, who are abusive, um, are not bad, evil people. They're hurting people. Hurt people hurt people. And when we see people that way, it doesn't excuse their hurtful behavior, but it begs for a different solution. Rather than punishing them, how about we help them
Break
figure
the
out
cycle.
the hurt that they have and heal the hurt so that they can go out and, you know, be in relationship with others and not show up in a hurtful way. So really, and the other thing it does is it changes the narrative too from these are just bad people, which is there's nothing we can do about it. That's a fixed
Yeah, it's easy to blame other
entity.
people. They're bad, I'm good. Put
Yeah,
them in
they're
categories and move
bad.
on.
Two, change is possible, and that's our tagline. That's our byline for the Ananias Foundation, which is, that once we point people to, getting the right kind of help, to understanding the cause, and then also the cure for their um, behavior that they're trying to change, they will change, and it is absolutely possible to do that.
Amen. Amen. So I hope each of you, if you're the person who might need the Ananias Foundation, go there. If you know someone in your life that you think could benefit from it, go to the ananiasfoundation.org. Take a look at the resources because we are living in a society that is getting much more depressed, much more angry, much more abusive, and we do need to do our part in our community to break this cycle. As Michael said, these aren't demons, these are people who have done bad things and they can be healed. So can you, as for many of you, for the sake of your children as well, because you need to break the cycle. If mommy or daddy stop abusing, you can help your child from becoming that person who will one day abuse. If you've liked this show, please share it with your friends, subscribe, hit the like button. And of course, if you want to support my ministry, just click on the link below. Financial help is always appreciated. And follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Rumble, trying to remember all the places, and I'm now on TikTok. So find me there and help save uh, friends' marriage, help save your own marriage, and far beyond. God has given me some great guests. We talk about topics like today. So I think that's all that we had to say. Is it any last words that you wanted to make sure we got out there, Michael?
Uh, Christine, thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, if anybody is looking for help or has questions that we haven't answered, just reach out to me. You'll find a contact information on our website. Reach out to me, and I try to respond to everybody. So
Amen.
um,
Thank you.
thank you so much for spreading the message and the great work that you do.
Well, thank you to our mutual friend who told me about you. So I'm grateful.
Yeah.
All right, let's see how much Michael can remember how I end my shows. So I think he's got this. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. You've been watching Breakfast with Bacon, and I'd like to remind you always to live your life. Do you remember?
Sunny side up.
Amen.